What if I told you that the greatest battles you'll ever fight won't be with other people, but with your own impulse to speak? Picture this. You're standing in a crowded room. Your ideas are being torn apart by someone who doesn't know the full story. Everyone's watching. Your heart races, your hands itch to defend yourself, and your pride demands revenge. But what if, in that very moment, the strongest move is to say nothing? It sounds absurd, doesn't it? In a world where everyone shouts louder to be seen, silence feels like surrender. But to the Stoics, those ancient philosophers who led empires and endured exile, it was the ultimate form of strength. This isn't just philosophy, it's strategy. It's a lost art. And in a time where people are rewarded for outrage, for opinions, for noise, choosing silence might just be the boldest rebellion left. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome and student of silence, once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who hurt you." Not clap back, not tear down, just be still. Let the truth breathe. Let the storm pass. And when it does, you're still standing, unshaken. You've probably never been taught that before, because no one teaches us the value of restraint. They teach us how to argue, not how to endure, how to win a debate, not how to win our peace. So, today I want to show you something different. I want to walk you through the 9 exact moments where silence doesn't just protect you, it transforms you. And if you stay with me to the end, you might just learn the quietest way to change your entire life. But first, if you feel like this kind of content is speaking to something deep inside you, if this makes you pause and breathe differently, then please consider subscribing. It helps more than you know, and gives me the fire to keep bringing these forgotten Stoic truths back to life. Let's begin where it all starts, when you're being criticized unfairly. Ethan was a brilliant designer. Not loud, not flashy, just talented. He'd spent weeks preparing a major exhibit for a company presentation in downtown Chicago. But at the launch event, something unexpected happened. His manager, clearly stressed and likely under pressure from above, publicly criticized Ethan's work for being off-brand and underwhelming. The room fell quiet. All eyes turned to Ethan. He could feel the heat rising in his chest. His mind screamed to respond, to defend his vision, his hours, his name. But Ethan didn't speak. He took a slow breath, looked his boss in the eye, nodded once, and simply walked back to his post. That night, Ethan didn't vent online. He didn't rant to coworkers. He pulled out a notebook and wrote down exactly what was said. He underlined the parts that were valid. He crossed out the parts that weren't. Then he asked himself, what can I do better? And what is not mine to carry? This is what Stoicism looks like in real life. Choosing reflection over reaction. Ethan's silence didn't mean weakness. It meant mastery. Because unfair criticism isn't really about you. It's about the other person's fears, pressure, or confusion. And when you choose not to react, you take back control. Not of the situation, but of yourself. And that's the only control that ever mattered. Now let's go to Los Angeles. A rooftop mixer, a crowd of investors, entrepreneurs, influencers. Ruby, mid-20s, sharp mind, sharp suit, is quietly nursing a glass of wine, listening. Around her, the air buzzes with brags. One man boasts about his 7-figure exit. Another talks about getting invited to a private party in Ibiza with a celebrity. Ruby could have played along. She had wins too. She could have dropped the name of the global startup she just closed funding with. But she didn't. She smiled. She asked questions. And she listened. That's when the most powerful man in the room, someone silent until now, walked up and said, "You're the only one here who isn't selling something. I respect that." This is Stoic silence in the face of boasting. It's about choosing presence over performance, confidence over competition. When you let others talk, they reveal themselves. And when you choose not to match ego with ego, you stand apart, calm, focused, rare. So ask yourself, in the moments where everyone else talks the loudest, what happens if you're the one who holds the silence? Let's make this interactive. Here's your question for the comments. Which silent act shows more strength to you? A. Not responding to public criticism. B. Staying humble while surrounded by braggarts. Drop your answer in the comments. Just type A or B, and let's see how. Many of us are ready to master the art of quiet power. There's a kind of fire that burns behind the eyes when someone wrongs you. It rises quickly, like heat off asphalt on a summer day. Your muscles tense, your heart pounds, and your voice, oh, your voice, aches to be released. We all know that. Fire. But what if the bravest thing you could ever do was not to speak? That's the hidden power of silence under pressure. Not the silence of fear or defeat, but the silence of someone who has learned to hold their fire, to master it, not be consumed by it. Jordan, a head chef in a bustling New York bistro, knows this fire well. It was a Friday night, the dining room was packed, and a sous chef made a critical mistake. 5 entrees ruined in one stroke during the peak hour. Plates went back, customers complained, the kitchen buzzed with panic. Jordan's first instinct was fury. He could feel it boiling to the surface. This wasn't the first time. He could have snapped, yelled, shamed the man in front of everyone. He had every reason to explode. But he didn't. He stepped outside the kitchen, into the cold alley behind the restaurant. For 3 minutes, he paced. He breathed deeply. He clenched and unclenched his fists. Then he walked back in. He didn't speak of the mistake. He calmly reassigned the dish to another cook and kept the line moving. Later, his sous chef came to apologize, ashamed and expecting a reprimand. Jordan simply said, "Let's talk about how not to repeat this on Monday." That silence, that choice, changed everything. The team didn't fear him. They trusted him. They worked harder for him. This is the kind of leadership we rarely see anymore. Not reactive, not explosive, just deliberate, composed, stoic. Because stoic silence isn't about bottling up your feelings. It's about respecting your emotions enough not to let them dictate your actions. It's about putting your mind in the driver's seat, even when the emotional engine is roaring. Now take a step into another kind of chaos. Claire, an elementary school teacher living in Venice, Italy, found herself at the center of an ugly rumor. A parent, upset that their child received average marks, began to whisper that Claire was biased, even unprofessional. The story slithered through the community, reaching teachers, administrators, neighbors. Claire heard the murmurs. She saw the looks, but she didn't issue a public statement. She didn't start defending herself in meetings or call out the parent. Instead, she kept showing up every day with the same kindness, the same standards, the same care for every child. Weeks passed, the rumor lost momentum. There was no new drama to feed it, and when the school board later reviewed her student outcomes and parent feedback, they found only excellence. The board, in its own time, publicly praised her teaching. Claire's silence wasn't avoidance, it was dignity. She knew her truth. She didn't need to perform it. That's the thing about unfounded rumors. They thrive on attention. They feed on defense. But when you starve them with silence, when you let your integrity speak through time and consistency, they wither. So many of us feel cornered by the urge to respond. We think if we don't speak, we're allowing the world to write our story. But sometimes, by not speaking, we're actually taking the pen back. Silence under pressure is an act of resistance. It says, "You don't get to dictate how I move. I do." It's grace in the face of chaos. It's the quiet strength of someone who knows that their actions, repeated and rooted in character, are more powerful than any words could ever be. If you've ever faced a moment where someone's error became your burden, or where your name was tossed into a rumor mill, ask yourself, what did reacting give you? What did it cost? And what could you gain if next time you chose the fire of discipline over the fire of retaliation? That's not silence for silence's sake. That's silence with soul. That's the kind of silence the Stoics lived for. The kind that doesn't just protect your peace, but multiplies it. The kind that makes you unforgettable, not for what you say, but for what you didn't have to. There are storms in life that don't come with thunder or lightning, no warning, no shelter. Just a sudden silence, a silence that follows the loss of something we thought we'd always have. And in that silence, we're left to pick up pieces, not just of the world around us, but of ourselves. Malcolm stood on the edge of Discovery Park in Seattle, watching the waves crash in silence against the shore. It had been 5 days since his father passed. 5 days where everything seemed too loud and yet too quiet. Messages poured in from friends, flowers from colleagues, well-meant advice from those who had grieved before him. But nothing spoke, louder than the ache in his chest, and nothing calmed it either. He didn't want to talk. He didn't want to be told to stay strong or remember the good times. What he needed was to feel it, to sit with the emptiness his father left behind and let it wash over him. So he came to the water again and again every morning before the city woke. That's where he started to understand what Stoicism had been trying to teach him. Not how to feel less, but how to feel fully without being destroyed by it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not be ashamed to grieve, but let grief show you what you loved." In the depths of that pain, Malcolm didn't just find sorrow, he found clarity. His father had been his mentor, his compass, his quiet hero, and now, even in his absence, he was still guiding him. One morning, Malcolm brought a simple wooden plaque with his father's favorite quote carved into it. "Do the right thing, even when it's the hard thing." He secured it to a bench overlooking the ocean. It wasn't for others to see, it was for him. A ritual of remembrance, a place to return when the world moved too fast and his heart needed space to breathe. Loss strips us bare. It removes the illusion that we're in control. And yet, Stoicism doesn't tell us to resist this. It tells us to lean in, to embrace the temporary nature of everything, not with bitterness but with grace. Seneca, another Stoic, once said, "The day you fear as your last is the birthday of eternity." Malcolm didn't read that quote until weeks after the funeral, but when he did, it resonated deeply. His father's death hadn't been an end. It had been a shift, a handing of the torch. And in his silence, Malcolm was learning how to carry. Grief is not weakness. It's not something to get over. It's a reminder of love, of what mattered, of what shaped you. But in a culture that rushes us to move on, silence becomes a form of rebellion, a sacred space where we can actually heal. Malcolm began to write letters to his father, not for anyone else, just for him. He filled notebooks with thoughts, updates, questions. It became a dialogue, one built not on sound, but on memory and reflection. And slowly, something unexpected happened. The pain didn't disappear, but it changed. It became part of him, like the roots of a tree reaching deeper into the ground, anchoring him more than before. He was no longer afraid of the silence. He welcomed it. It became his teacher. There's a reason silence is the default after loss. Because nothing we say can truly measure what has been taken. No words can replace presence. But in that silence, we can rebuild. Not with noise, with intention, with ritual, with stillness. So if you've lost someone or something that mattered, give yourself permission to be quiet, to walk, to cry, to sit without answers, to write, not to be read, but to be released, to grieve not just in sorrow, but in love. You don't need to speak your way through grief. You can live your way through it. With each silent step forward, you honor what was, and slowly, gently, you shape what will be. There's a unique kind of silence we often overlook. The silence we choose not because we're defeated, but because we know the futility of engaging with ignorance. Not the kind of ignorance that stems from lack of access or opportunity, but the willful kind. The kind that clings to falsehood with pride, that argues not to understand, but to overpower. Olivia had seen it many times. As a climatologist working in Austin, Texas, she'd spent years gathering data, building models, and educating communities about the long-term impacts of climate change. She didn't expect everyone to agree with her. She welcomed curiosity, even skepticism. But what she couldn't prepare for was a public forum where a man stood up and shouted, "It's all a scam." You people are fearmongers trying to control us." There it was. The room went silent. People braced for a debate, for a defensive lecture, for facts hurled like weapons. But Olivia didn't respond the way they expected. She looked the man in the eye and calmly asked, "What's one thing you hope your grandchildren will still enjoy when they grow up?" He paused, mumbled, sat down, and Olivia moved on, not with triumph, but with compassion. Later, a student in the audience asked why she hadn't responded with data or rebuttals. Olivia smiled. "I've learned that truth doesn't need to fight to be true," she said, "but people need space to hear it when they're ready." This is what navigating ignorance with grace looks like. It's not silence born from avoidance. It's silence forged through wisdom. Understanding that not every fight is yours to take, not every falsehood requires your correction, and not every listener is ready to receive. Because grace in the face of ignorance isn't weakness, it's discipline. It's understanding that your peace is too precious to throw into every storm. It's knowing when to speak for change and when to stay quiet for clarity. Marcus, a photographer based in Paris, learned this the hard way. After a major gallery showing of his new series, he found himself under fire on social media. Accusations swirled, claiming his work was derivative, unoriginal, even stolen from other artists. None of it was true, but the damage moved fast. Comments, stories, DMs from strangers. Some of his own followers turned cold. His first instinct was to go live, to explain, to fight back. But something in him paused. He thought of his grandfather who once told him, "A lie needs an audience, don't give it one." So he went silent. He logged off. He spent the next week in his studio, creating a series of raw, stripped-down portraits. No color, no titles, no explanations. Just faces, truth, emotion. When he posted them online, he included no caption, no defense, no hashtags. Just the work. The response was quiet at first, but slowly people began to share the images. Not because he asked them to, but because they felt something. The noise faded. His message landed, not through words, but through presence. That's the thing about navigating ignorance. When you don't give it friction, it burns out. When you stop reacting, you start leading, and sometimes silence is the only way to keep your energy aligned with your values. To stop chasing approval or justice from those unwilling to offer it. To turn inward, toward the truth you already know. Olivia's and Marcus's stories aren't just inspiring. They're reminders of a deeper kind of strength, one that's harder to master than clever words or sharp comebacks. It's the strength to let ignorance reveal itself without your help. To trust that clarity doesn't always come from being right out loud, but from being right in your actions. And in a world that rewards the loudest voice in the room, being the calmest presence might just be the most radical thing you can do. Let others shout. Let false narratives twist and turn. You keep building, creating, living. Because sometimes the only response ignorance deserves is your silence and your unwavering, undeniable truth. There's a certain kind of injustice that doesn't scream in your face. It whispers behind closed doors. It's subtle, veiled in politeness, wrapped in bureaucracy. But its sting is no less sharp. And when it finds you, when it looks you in the eye and denies you what you've rightfully earned, the instinct is to rage, to fight, to call it out for what it is. Dr. Aria knew that feeling. A physician in Charleston, South Carolina, she had spent nearly a decade building trust within her hospital, leading patient care initiatives, mentoring interns, publishing research, and taking the toughest shifts when no one else would. She had built her name with quiet precision and relentless compassion. So when the leadership position opened up in her department, no one doubted she would be chosen. No one except the decision makers. They passed her over with a hollow excuse. We're looking for someone with a different kind of leadership presence. Different. A word that said everything and nothing. A word that had been used her whole life, quietly, when doors didn't open. Aria felt the weight of it press against her chest like a stone. It wasn't just about a title, it was about the principle. She had done the work. She had paid her dues. And still, somehow, it wasn't enough. She wanted to shout. to call out the injustice for what it was, to email everyone, to burn bridges. Instead, she chose something far harder. She chose stillness. Not the kind that accepts, the kind that recalibrates, refocuses, rebuilds. That night, she didn't sleep, but she did write. She wrote a mission statement, not for the hospital, but for herself. She outlined a vision to mentor and empower young Black women entering medicine. She knew what the system wouldn't give her, she would build herself. And not just for her, but for others like her. Within months, Aria launched a quiet mentorship circle. No press releases, no LinkedIn posts, just women gathering every month, talking about medicine, fear, ambition, racism, resilience. What began with 3 mentees turned into 12, then 30. Her evenings were filled with stories, with laughter, with a shared strength that institutions couldn't give and couldn't take away. And something remarkable happened. Her silence, her refusal to lash out, became the loudest thing about her. Hospital board members began to notice the impact she was having outside of official channels. Younger colleagues started seeking her out for guidance. Her influence grew, not because she demanded power, but because she created it. Stoicism teaches us that we don't control the actions of others, only our response to them. That our greatest revenge is not to become like those who harm us. Aria lived that truth. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was defiance of a different kind. A calm, steady refusal to let injustice define her worth or dictate her energy. Too often, when faced with injustice, we assume action must be loud, visible, aggressive. But there is another path. The path of strategic stillness, of choosing to lead by example, not by retaliation, of letting the quality of our work and the consistency of our values do the speaking for us. This is not passivity, it is power under control. It's the decision to build rather than burn, to influence rather than implode. It's the choice to stay rooted, even as the storm rages. Aria's story is not about staying quiet forever. It's about choosing your moments, about knowing that true change doesn't always come from shouting down the gate. It comes from building a door no one can close on you again. And maybe that's the greatest act of justice you can offer the world, to remain unshaken in the face of exclusion, and to keep building the future with grace, resilience, and quiet fire. There's a sting that comes with being insulted, not just from the words themselves, but from the way they catch you off guard. It feels like a test, a challenge to your pride, a demand to defend your dignity. And yet, in that very moment, what if the most dignified thing you could do was nothing at all? Elijah had trained his whole life to be strong. As a fitness coach in Miami, he pushed himself harder than most, not just physically, but mentally. He had built his career from the ground up, earning respect in a world that rarely gave it easily. His clients came to him not just for muscle, but for mindset. One afternoon during a crowded session at the gym, a new client, clearly insecure, decided to make a scene. "You're just biceps and a smile," the man scoffed, loud enough for others to hear. "Bet you can't spell half the exercises you teach." Laughter rippled around them. The air thickened with tension. Everyone waited for Elijah to respond, but he didn't. He met the man's eyes, gave a quiet nod, and turned back to help another client finish their set. That moment didn't pass quietly. People talked about it for days, not about the insult, but about the restraint. Elijah could have crushed the man with a single comment. He had the verbal agility, the wit, but instead, he chose mastery over reaction. And in doing so, he showed everyone something far more powerful than dominance. He showed control. Later, the man approached him privately, visibly embarrassed. "I don't know why I said that," he admitted. "You didn't deserve it." Elijah simply replied, "You were having a rough day. We all do." That's the essence of Stoicism in the face of insult. Knowing that another person's outburst doesn't define you, and more importantly, that it doesn't need to move you. Marcus Aurelius said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. It's a sharp truth, one that demands we own our reactions as much as our words. Insults are easy to throw. They take no discipline, no wisdom. But silence in return, that's earned. That's carved from years of learning who you are and no longer needing to prove it. We live in a culture obsessed with comebacks. Every viral clip is someone shutting someone else down. We glorify the roast, the clapback, the perfectly timed insult. But rarely do we honor the one who stays still, the one who holds their peace like a shield, the one who lets the insult float by like a leaf in a stream, never grasped, never owned, because silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes silence is the sound of someone so rooted in themselves, so aware of their value, that nothing untrue can touch them. And it is in this final lesson, this choice to ignore, to stay calm, to stay kind, that the full picture of Stoic silence becomes clear. We've walked through storms of criticism, through moments of anger and injustice, through grief, gossip, and ignorance. And in every one of them, silence was not the absence of action. It was the highest form of it. Silence, when chosen with intention, is not withdrawal. It's a declaration. A statement that says, I am not yours to provoke. I do not dance to your chaos. I answer only to what I know is true. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, don't waste time debating what a good man should be one. And perhaps the deepest application of that wisdom is to understand that a good man or woman doesn't always need to explain. Sometimes they simply need to live so clearly, so consistently, that explanation becomes unnecessary. So if you've been insulted, whether online, at work, or in your own home, take a breath. Before you reply, ask yourself, who are you really? Answering? And what does it cost you to answer at all? Elijah didn't gain power that day by striking back. He gained it by standing still, by letting the insult fall flat against the weight of his character. You can do the same. Let your silence speak of your strength. Let your stillness become your statement. And let your life, steady and focused, speak louder than any defense ever could. Because in the end, the ones who master silence don't just walk away from conflict, they rise above it, unbothered, unshaken, unforgettable. In a world that celebrates loud opinions, fast reactions, and constant visibility, the quiet decisions of 9 individuals told a different story, one of true inner strength. These weren't characters in a fable. They were real people, like you and me, living in cities across the globe, facing pressure, unfairness, grief, injustice, and even personal attacks. And yet, in moments when the world demanded a loud response, they chose silence. Ethan, the designer, held his tongue in the face of public criticism, trusting that his work and reflection would speak louder than any defense. Ruby, in the spotlight of empty boasting, remained grounded and let others talk themselves into revealing their insecurities. Jordan, fueled by justified anger, walked outside instead of exploding, leading his team not with volume, but with calm. Claire, surrounded by unfounded rumors, chose to keep showing up with integrity until the noise simply faded. Malcolm, mourning the loss of his father, didn't cover his grief with distractions. He sat with it, and through that silence, found his own path forward. Olivia, a scientist in the face of willful ignorance, offered not debate, but reflection, allowing silence to carry more weight than argument. Marcus, attacked by online rumors, chose to respond with art and stillness, turning a moment of accusation into one of connection. Dr. Aria, denied a leadership role she had earned, used her pain not to fight back, but to lift others, creating real impact through quiet mentorship. And Elijah, insulted in public, refused to take the bait. He answered not with words, but with restraint, leaving everyone watching with a new model of power. Each story is unique, but together they form a single truth. Silence, when practiced with intention, is not emptiness. It is presence. It is self-control. It is the refusal to be pulled off course by the chaos of others. This is what Stoic silence teaches us, that our words don't define our worth, our actions do. That not every moment requires our opinion. That sometimes the highest form of strength is the decision to not respond, to not retaliate, and to trust that time, truth, and character will reveal what noise never could. In a world of hot takes, outrage, and constant noise, the practice of thoughtful silence is rare, but it's also powerful. It brings us back to ourselves. It creates space for clarity. It protects our energy, our peace, and our purpose. So how do we apply this today? Start with small decisions. The next time someone criticizes you unfairly, pause before replying. Ask yourself if defending your ego is more valuable than protecting your peace. When someone brags, listen instead of competing. When anger rises, take 3 deep breaths and step away. When gossip comes knocking, choose to be the person who doesn't pass it on. And when insulted, remember, silence is often the response that says the most. Not every moment demands a voice. Some moments call for presence, for grace, for restraint. That's what these 9 people showed us, not with lectures, but with lives lived in quiet strength. And now, let me ask you a question. If someone insulted you in front of others, what would you do? A. Respond with a clever comeback. B. Stay calm. And let your silence carry the weight. Type your answer in the comments, just A or B. Let's see how many of us are ready to practice this kind of still power. And more importantly, what do you think about these stories? Which one felt the most like your own life? Which one challenged you the most? Share your thoughts below. Your comment might inspire someone else to rethink how they move through the noise of the world. And if this resonated with you, if you found even a moment of clarity, strength, or peace in these lessons, subscribe to the channel. It's what keeps this space growing and what fuels us to bring you more timeless wisdom for modern challenges. Until next time, remember, sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all.